I was approximately fifth grade, and I was staying the night with my grandmother at her house. And it was the middle of the night, and I was crying and I was praying for my little brother. As many of you know, my brother was born with Down syndrome, meaning that the 21st chromosome was either partially or completely tripled, and he had Down syndrome and everything that came with that. And I was praying that God would fix it. God didn't. Kerry went through his life with Down syndrome. He died when he was 50 from complications from Alzheimer's, which is very common with children who have Down syndrome or people who have Down syndrome. And it brings up the question, what do we do about praying for healing? What are the guidelines? What are the standards? We always say pray for healing, but is there a point when we stop? Is there a point, some people actually ask me this, is there a point where it's wrong to continue praying for healing? How long should we pray? And this isn't going to be some theological treatise. It's just going to be some practical stuff that I've kind of picked up along the way of watching God work and how God works and what I've seen from the Bible and what I've seen from life. And I've just got a handful of points to give you to maybe help you wrestle with this question in your own life, in your own situation, whatever the kind of healing that you're needing. The first point I want to make is that God's normal standard technique for healing is to use the body's own abilities. That God has, in an amazing, wonderful way, wired our bodies to heal themselves of many, many things. And God's healing, usually we don't even think of it as a big deal because God allows it to happen. And then God's given us the knowledge to figure out ways to help our bodies do an even better job healing themselves. Many of our treatments that we use for the most serious diseases and illnesses takes advantage of the fact that the body really, really, really wants to heal itself. And so recognize that's God's normal policy. That's his normal practice. Okay? That's not his only practice. But recognize that the overwhelming majority of the time when God wants healing to occur, he just uses what the body can do on itself, or he uses medicine to do it. Again, he doesn't have to. He still can and does reach into situations, reach into his physical universe and create healing. But he normally uses just regular stuff. Okay? Another thing to remember, to recognize in all this, is that God frequently tips his hand. Now this is where I'm going to start saying things that aren't as popular, but I think they're things we need to hear. Okay? See, God has a path in our lives, and God has a path in the lives of our loved ones and our children and our parents and everyone around us. God has a path. Okay? And he frequently tips his hand as to what the path is. And I'm going to be really honest with you. I know a lot of people where God has clearly, I think, shown the path he's taking. And it's okay to pray for God to come off that path. But recognize, he normally takes the path he's showing. Okay, God doesn't surprise us that often in that way. He normally takes the path he is showing us. And sometimes we can exhaust ourselves trying to move God off that path, and we put our faith in our ability to move God off that path, and God frequently stays on the path he's showing us. If you're dealing with a case where you are wanting to pray for a loved one or yourself in a matter of healing, one question to ask is, how far down the path have we gone? I know that sounds terrible. But the reality is that God more frequently heals at the beginning of the path than he does toward the end. I hate to have to tell you that, but it's true. Doesn't mean God can't heal toward the end. God doesn't mean God won't heal toward the end. But sometimes people are exhausting themselves trying to move God off the path he's shown he's taking. And the reason a lot of times I think that we are praying God off the path is the next point I have, is to recognize the value of that path. God never healed my brother of Down syndrome. But God did incredible things using the path he allowed Kerry to go down, and he allowed my family to go down. The list, when we were at Kerry's funeral, terrible thing to bring up, but the coolest part of the whole process was how everybody came up to us, just lines and lines of people. And they all had a story about Kerry. And they all had, the conclusion of that story was always how God had used Kerry in their lives for a positive way, in a positive way, for a positive impact. He changed a community. Okay? And the only way God could do that was to allow Carrie and our family to walk down that path. Though there's value in that path. There are lessons God can teach you through sickness He can never teach you through health. Okay? Now, what normally happens or frequently happens is as you're traveling down the path, God brings a peace about the path to you. Okay? And here's what will happen frequently is that well-meaning people may want to change your path, especially your prayer path. Somebody would come along and suddenly they think you're not praying hard enough, and they're coming in and they're going to pray hard enough to move God off the path. They're going to pray hard enough. They have enough faith. Don't let anybody steal your peace. I hope I said that loudly. I think I did. Don't let anybody steal your peace. God will bring you peace along the path. Even if there's pain, lots of peace in there. God will bring peace frequently along the path. And sometimes there's a well-meaning person. They're wanting the best for you. And they'll come in and they'll try to convince you that you're not distraught enough, that you're not praying with enough passion. And it may well be that God, you just know how God's going to work this. He's tipped His hand. You have a good idea. Now, it's cool if people come along and they're inspiring you to pray. Somebody comes along and inspiring you to pray more about a situation. That's always a good thing. But never let anybody guilt you into prayer. Nobody has that right. You and God and your family are on a journey together. Okay? And people come along well-meaning frequently, but they try to guilt you into praying. They make you feel like you're not doing enough. You're not praying hard enough. You're not doing enough. And that's a pile of crap because they don't know the path you're on. They don't know what you're up to. They don't know what you're up against. They don't know what God's doing in your life. God does, and frequently you do. So don't let them pray. Don't let them guilt your peace away. And one final point, and this is so crucial. Life is short. Eternity is long. Now this is another one of those truths nobody wants to hear, but everybody's going to die. We die. That's part of the human experience is death. The question isn't if, the only question's when. And frankly, no matter how long your life on earth is, in this life, before eternity, no matter how long it is, it's going to seem like a finger snap compared to eternity. So the person who dies incredibly young and the person who dies incredibly old, the length of time they were in this life compared to eternity is that. I learned this lesson. I believe God taught me this lesson back in the early 80s. There was a scholar, philosopher, writer named Francis Schaeffer who impacted lots and lots of lives in the 60s and 70s and into the early 80s. And when I was at college, they brought him to our school to give what was one of the last set of lectures he ever gave, and it was wonderful, and he was fantastic, wonderful thinker, wonderful Christian man. About the same time, there was this Christian musician named Keith Green, and Keith Green was shaking things up. Keith Green changed my life. The passion in his music, to this day, if I listen to a bunch of Keith Green music, it'll shake me up and I will get even more passionate about Christ than I am before. And Keith Green was killed in a plane crash when he was very young and it seemed at the peak of his ministry. And this happened just before Francis Schaeffer came to the school I was at. And I'm sitting in the audience, and I got a good seat because I was a philosophy major, and I'm looking at Francis Schaeffer, who I can tell his journey's about done. His path's about over for this life. And God kind of just made me aware that he and Keith Green weren't that different. That God had a mission. There were things he was going to accomplish through Keith Green's life. There were things he was going to accomplish through Francis Schaeffer's life. And when they were complete with those, he was going to take them out of this world and bring them to himself to bring them the ultimate joy. And all of us have what God is wanting to accomplish in life. And God will allow things into our lives, some things tragic, so that he can bring about what he wants to bring. And when he's done, he brings us home. He doesn't leave us here longer than he needs to. Even sometimes it may seem like he is, but we're always here. God says our days are numbered. He knows the number of our days. And God never wastes a life, and he never wastes a hurt. And the lessons are valuable, and life is short and eternity is long. And for the person who has that maybe a short and seemingly painful life, recognize it's like getting a shot compared to eternity. And you may have to go through some struggles and some rough times, but God goes with us. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, though I'm walking right alongside that valley, and sometimes I'm walking that valley with someone I love, I'll fear no evil. Not because God's always going to drag me out of the valley, not because if I pray hard enough, He'll pull me out of the valley. I'll be okay because He is with me. So, should I pray for healing in a real desperate situation? Heck yeah. Pray for healing. But remember, sometimes God heals in this life, but every time He heals in the next. And His love is always revealed in the process as He walks with us through the valley, whether the end of that valley is healing in this earth or healing in the next.